Okay, we're back in with okay, we're back in. We're going to discuss what happened diplomatically this turn. I made a rule that on the first turn that all that this would be the initiative order. Even if a power decided to do more than one political action, this would still be the order that people would go in. We managed to get all the way through. There was you roll after each time, and after each person goes to see if the next person gets to go, and there were no rolls that ended the diplomatic segment early. We started out with Shonho that declared war on Ubo. And they also gave a guarantee to Dramikos down here, which is the only other diamond country. Shonho is a diamond country. And the declaration of war against Ubo caused Dramikos to get a -1 versus a -1 modification, diplomatic modification versus Shonho because they declared war. So you have to activate a minor every single time you do one of the, well, not for all political options, but after most. So there were other effects from that. I mean, there are some other countries that have effects. I'm using, oh, just a side note, I'm using the markers from Days of Decision, and so we're having to use the original flags. I'm just drawing them randomly. It turned out that Shonho is going to get the French flags. So, so a number of countries got negatives against Shonho because of that declaration of war. So I went ahead and picked Dramikos to activate after doing that. And at that point, there was just a -1 against Shonho. So normally you would come over here, you'd find Dramikos, which actually happens. I don't believe they're supposed to be there. But I'll figure that out. But anyway, they would normally move 1 hex towards away from Shonho if I activated them now. However, it costs 2 points to enter any hex. So by resolving that now, it just gets rid of that -1 in Dramikos and leaves Dramikos there or wherever they're supposed to be. I think perhaps I was thinking in my mind that there would be elevation here. I think that this guy is away a little bit from the exact center with Shonho. But I'll work that out and get back to you about that. So then I went on and gave him a guarantee, which then gave me, if I hadn't done that, so he gave me 3 points in the positive for Dramikos. If I hadn't gotten rid of that -1 previously, that -3 would have only aggregated to a negative. I mean, that +3 would have only aggregated to a +2. Um, so, but you can't activate the same miner 2 times in a row. If you do more than one action. So my next activation was I don't remember. We're just going to have to skip over that. I don't remember what his next activation was. But okay, and so then we're going to go on to the next power, which is Welland. They declared war on this little country, V1 over here, which is constituted by this town right here and this little bit and this little bit over here. And I modified, you'll see, these guys wound up getting the Italian symbol, and there are some negatives around the board for their declaration of war on V1. Then the final thing that happened, oh, and they activated, there was originally a negative in Etrasia over here. They activated Etrasia and burned off that negative before it could amount to anything. It was just a -1. Then Hussein was next, which is Hussein is right here. And they elected to play the 0G event, which allows you to triple your double or triple. I'm not sure which way we're going to do it here. I think it's going to be triple. Triple your diplomatic points saved to be played the next turn, the next diplomatic phase. And so that's all they did. You can't play, I don't believe you can play another action and do that. Then finally, Ganabria, it was the fourth one, played a trade action, which is IPO 2, off the general political actions that every party can do in Days of Decision, which is to make a trade agreement with a miner. And they made a trade agreement with Weidong here, and I'm allowing it it's not just one resource. You're going to get 2 in this game instead of 1 when you do that. And I have not yet resolved his political action. I'm going to go ahead and do that now to kind of explain a little bit of how this works. So you get to resolve these in the order that you want. Both Shonho and Welland have accrued -2s. And then Ganabria has achieved a 3. These points, I'll show you again. There's a treaty chart and there's a war chart that have been developed for the game, similar to how there's like how they have in Days of Decision. And so Ganabria is going to go ahead and activate Weidong, and they get to resolve these chits in the order that they want. So first they're going to pick Shonho. Here's Weidong over here. So with a -2, I'm going to have to move Weidong 1 hex away from Shonho, which is in the center here. So they're going to move from this hex to this hex. And they can be together in the same hex because they're not in a state of enmity with one another. As a matter of fact, they belong to the same league. So I'm resolving that. Now, then I'm going to resolve the Ganabria chit. Put that over here. That's 3 points. In order to move the Weidong into the same hex with Ganabria, it's 2 to move into the hex, plus because I'm a named power, it costs an extra point. So that costs the full 3. So 3 points was just enough to move him into the same hex with Ganabria. Being in the same hex, if I played the right political action later on, I could try to ally with Weidong if I wanted to. Finally, I'm going to play the Welland initiative, and it will cost Weidong 2 movement points to move to another hex. It would have to be away from Welland, but because it's in the same hex with a named minor, Ganabria, it costs an extra movement point to leave that hex. So this gets burned. It doesn't do anything at all. It would have cost 3 to exit the hex. I could have used that to move him further towards our alliance area here. I would no longer have been able to ally with him because we wouldn't have been in the same place. But, and again, if I wanted to move in this direction, it would have also cost an extra point to move into Hussein, because Hussein is a named minor. So it would have cost 4 points to move from here to here. So those are the effects of activating that minor. These chits are all burned. They go off to the side again. And that's the end of the diplomatic phase right here. The next thing that happened is we rolled to see what minors, what forces the minors were going to get. And I believe that Ubo, which Shonho declared war on, got a 4, which gave them 2 infantry divisions, 2 infantry corps, 1 artillery corps, 1 fleet, and one light fleet, and 1 fortification. And then later on when we get to, so we don't have to come back to this, later on when we get to V1, which Welland attacked, they wound up getting the 6 partisans. So they're going to have to deal with partisans. Those forces were set up right away. And then the next phase in strategy 1 is to have production. And I'll just read it out for you. Shonho, I'm thinking of moving production to the end of the turn like it is in Days of Decision or World in Flames, that kind of stuff. But for now, I'm just going to leave it at the start of the turn the way it is in strategy 1. See if there isn't a reason for it. So Shonho did a fighter tech, a bomber tech. They bought an attack transport, a supply, and one air base. Grozomir purchased mech warfare and bomber tech, those two techs. They purchased a fighter, an artillery unit, and a supply unit. And here you see they get the supply unit right away. Oh, they also did production. They're going to get an increase in their production level on turn 3. The way we're doing this is you roll 2 d5s to see how many turns ahead your production will, your tech advancement will happen. So they're getting production there. They're getting, let me try to get this focused again for you there. They're getting artillery turn 4. They're getting mech warfare turn, they're getting the mech warfare advance turn 5. They're getting the fighters the fighters they purchased on turn 7 and the bomber tech on turn 8. I may increase the amount of time even more that it takes for these guys to get their techs. It's coming out to be a little shorter than I wanted it to be, but at the same time, in the first year or so, we might be able to do some of this stuff faster. We'll see. Okay, the next country is Voltaria. They bought 2 fighters. They bought a bomber tech. They bought an infantry unit, and they bought a supply unit. Baspera. They bought an infantry unit, 2 submarines, a flak unit, and a supply. Hussein bought mech warfare. They bought a fighter. They bought an air base. They bought an administration. Really? Okay, they bought an administration unit. They bought an attack transport. They bought a light bomber. And they bought a fighter. Contin purchased a supply unit, 2 fighters, and a submarine. Ganabria purchased carrier tech, an air base, supply, a fighter, infantry, and a light bomber. Welland purchased a fighter tech, a bomber, 2 supplies, 2 airfields, and 2 administrative units. Their bomber